So I just recently dropped about 42 pounds of fat to get ready for my first bodybuilding show. Even in a hypocaloric diet in the super starved state, I didn't deal with any cravings during or after the cut. In fact, the only cravings that I dealt with were the foods that were already in my diet.
It's literally, you can't eat just one potato chip kind of thing. That's what it's supposed to be. However, I do know people that can eat just one potato chip. I'm one of those people.
Listen, I've never in my life met any client who has been sneaking behind a Taco Bell dumpster to get high off of a gordita or something like that. Hi, I'm Leslie Hooper.
And I'm Steph Miramontes.
A question we often get asked is, would you recommend cheat meals for weight loss? And scrolling through TikTok, I found this video, and I just wanted to take a moment to break things down. Steph has not seen this video yet, so it should be fun to see how you feel about it, Steph. Let's go ahead.
Okay, so what are my thoughts when it comes to cheat days or cheat meals once a week or once a day? So if you've been stuck struggling to get your weight off, it's...
Wait a minute. Once a week or once a day? Once a day? Who has cheat meals once a day? What does that even mean? Like, you have to be in some bonkers, restrictive, chaotic diet in order to feel like you need a cheat meal once a day. Isn't that just called eating? I don't know. I think that's eating.
I think a lot of people, listen, I always say if you need cheat meals, then you got to look at your overall diet, because realistically speaking, people who love what they eat consistently don't need cheat meals. But let's see what else he has to say.
Probably because of this reason. So I just recently dropped about 42 pounds of fat to get ready for my first bodybuilding show. Even in a hypocaloric diet in the super starved state, I didn't deal with any cravings during or after the cut. In fact, the only cravings that I dealt with were the foods that were already in my diet. There's a common...
Okay, so I've worked with fitness competitors quite a bit, and I don't work with them anymore. But if you are saying, like, I didn't have any cravings at all during my cut and you got that lean, then chances are you have either figured out the holy grail way to cut, like some miraculous something, or you're a dude. I'm sorry, but for the most part, women cannot fit near as much food, near as many calories. So they don't have near as much room when it comes to losing weight, sure. But when it comes to going from pretty lean to super lean, competition lean, I'm sorry. It's probably because you're a dude. I'm just gonna throw that one out there.
phenomenon that's currently being studied right now called the hyperpalatability reward systems. What we're finding is that foods that are hyperpalatable can have the same response within the brain similar to a drug or alcohol. So I firmly believe that a lot of these hyperpalatable foods, junk food, processed food, chips, candy, those kind of things, can be highly addictive. Think of it this way. A cocaine addict doesn't reward themselves for being clean by having a snort of cocaine. An alcoholic doesn't reward themselves for being 5 years sober by having a drink. So why are we rewarding ourselves with our weight loss progress with the foods that got us here in the first place? Think about that.
Oh, I'm thinking about it. This is obviously the kind of messaging that creates extreme diets in the first place, that all or nothing restriction. The reality is, as you often say, Steph, is there is no such thing as a weight loss or fat gaining food. All foods are weight loss and can be fat gaining foods. That has more to do with the volume, the calorie intake, than the, I guess, controversial topic of what the food itself is made up of.
Well, I will be the first in line to tell you that you can overeat your way into weight gain on clean eating, on a quote unquote clean diet. Been there, done that, wrote the book. It's happened. So while I do understand the message, like highly palatable foods, foods that are engineered to taste delicious and work on our brain chemistry a little bit, which is all food to some degree, by the way. But yes, these foods, they work on our brain chemistry. They're spiking the dopamine, that we're chasing the pleasure. literally you can't eat just one potato chip kind of thing, is that's what it's supposed to be. However, I do know people that can eat just one potato chip. I'm one of those people. So it's not the food itself that is creating this environment. How much of it is actually just the message that you can't stop eating these foods because they're bad, because they're fattening, because they're problematic? If you're including all of these foods in your day-to-day diet, and I don't mean like a diet as in counting calories, but just what you eat in general, then they lose so much of their power. Now, not for everyone, right? But again, that really has to do with so many other factors. Like, why are we overeating in the first place? Why are we relying on food as our source of pleasure each and every day and over relying on it? So we're overeating it.
I also just really hate the inflammatory language around it being compared to cocaine
Oh,
and
Jesus.
alcohol. Because I'm like, listen, I have never in my life met any client who has been sneaking behind a Taco Bell dumpster to get high off of a gordita or something like that. It's just, do we have to use such dramatic language, fear mongering, making people feel like, oh God, I can't possibly have a chocolate because I'm never going to be able to stop eating. Now I'm addicted, which disempowers you from taking personal responsibility, or at least even being curious, having the conversation about, why do I struggle to stop after a few bites of this particular food? That's the underlying issue that we really want to get to the root of, is the emotional response to the food, why you might feel out of control around it in the first place.
I'm really kind of curious what happened after the competition as well, because in my experience, people that have taken extreme approaches to extreme cuts and getting that lean, there's a huge joke running around the entire fitness industry, competition industry as a whole, about the rebound, about the 20 pounds that you pack on because you're finally eating all of the things that you didn't allow yourself to eat before. So I don't know how long ago that competition was. Clearly not as lean as the photos, right? So definitely has put some weight back on. And it all comes down to what kind of life you want to be living. Yeah, if you want to eat boiled chicken breast and steamed broccoli and only have, a tablespoon of olive oil to spread throughout your entire day and count out your almonds and all the things, be my guest, have at it. But chances are you will want that cheat meal, and you are cutting a lot of other pleasures out of your life by cutting pleasurable food out of your life. The connection, the time, the things that we eat around the table for date nights and things like that. So again, like, if that's right up your alley, I'm not a picky eater. I could eat all fruits and vegetables and lean foods and all the things. I don't want to, but I mean, it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world for me to be like, oh no, I'm not going to eat cookies again, because if I hated vegetables, then that might be difficult. But I don't. Like, I would still have a wide variety of food. I'm just curious how quickly the weight came back on, and at what was the mechanism of action of overeating there. Are we just overeating on clean foods to bring the weight back on? And to be clear, I know that stage lean is not sustainable lean. I don't expect anybody to stay stage lean, but there was quite a difference between the two photos. So I'm just curious how quickly that transformation or detransformation happened.
Well, I think, as you indicated, anytime you go to extreme lengths to lose a bunch of weight rapidly, which, let's be honest, dieting for bodybuilding competitions is about as extreme as it gets, the rebound happens very quickly as well. And I would say even more so with women, in my experience, and having also previously worked with competitors. Listen, anytime you're scrolling on Instagram and TikTok and you're drooling over donuts and hoarding all the foods you get to binge on post show, we're already demonstrating some unhealthy signs of eating behaviors. I would say there are very few women that I've worked with or that I know who have been transparent, who have actually been able to get contest lean and not develop some kind of dysfunctional eating pattern through that process. I mean, again, a lot of the time it's because we feel like we have to have a diet on the horizon to be able to maintain a fit lifestyle or be And also, Steph, I know you can relate to this, and we're going maybe down a different path here, but once you get that degree of lean, we idolize it. We're always chasing it. The current body with a bit of more body fat generally isn't good enough. And so it's kind of keeps us on that hamster wheel, striving for more. And I've interacted with people who said, yes, I need to always have kind of a contest on the horizon. Otherwise, I'm just going to completely spiral out of control.
Yeah, I know that it takes a completely different type of person to diet to stage lean over and over and over again successfully. And genetics play a factor in here too about doing it successfully without the same level of hormonal consequences, but they do catch up to everyone eventually, especially women. There's a lot of hormonal consequences that happen. But I think this conversation, to kind of circle it back to cheat meals and to your point, the inflammatory language about it being addictive, is that it becomes that when we rely on it for our main source of pleasure and we don't have any boundaries around it. We're not eating these things consciously. We're reacting instead of being thoughtful. It's in our environment. We're grabbing it. Somebody else is having it. We're grabbing it. We're sad. We're stressed. We've had a long day. We're grabbing it. We've been drinking. So we got to be eating. All of these connections are what make it feel like we're out of control. And then also deny the language around it's bad, it's wrong, it's addictive, it's all of these things. If we're not eating it in a way that's responsible and respectful to our body, then it is going to feel like we are doing something wrong. It is going to create that sneak eating, maybe not behind a Taco Bell dumpster, but definitely in a drive-through as people start throwing away their wrappers and hiding them from their spouse and their friends and their family. So I think if we can just eliminate the shame, then we can create some boundaries, and then we can start understanding why we want to overeat them in the first place instead of eating them in a way that is like, okay, we're eating for pleasure. Yes, nutrients, energy, all of the things that we eat for, but I don't have to eat my face off about it. And the more you villainize these foods, the more you push them away and try to restrict them, the more you're struggling and having this kind of internal battle, this internal tug of war. And as soon as you lose big. It's like, well, I've already had a handful of potato chips. Now I want more. And because these foods are quote unquote bad, now I feel guilty. Now I feel bad. I'm going to eat the whole bag of potato chips because I've already paid the price of guilt and shame so that I can get it out of my system and be better tomorrow, which of course. And when I'm better tomorrow, then I'm never going to buy this shit again. And that is so unrealistic. And that then reinforces the belief that these things are addictive and bad, because you had a handful of them and then you went crazy because you've told yourself for so long that they're bad. You felt like shit. And then you did the quote unquote bad feeling thing. It's an endless cycle.
The more extreme the diet, the more extreme the weight gain, I would say. And so we have to learn how to interact with these foods in a healthy way. And frankly, nobody's really talking about how to do that because the diet industry is so binary in their language and their approach. It's all or nothing. And when it's all or nothing, it's always nothing. So I would just encourage our viewers here to continue staying with us as we release these videos and expand more on the topic of how to use hunger and fullness as your ultimate calorie counter, because your body knows naturally, intuitively. And I kind of cringe at the word intuitively because that's a can of worms in and of itself. But we've just become so disconnected from our bodies. And now we're eating from our mind, from calorie counts, from the clock, from, rules and all of these things that now we have kind of all these, I guess, ultimately good and bad ways to eat. And anytime we're breaking one of our rules, it does kind of turn into a case of the fuck it's, and now we're eating all the things. And so we need to kind of get to that place where we can be consistent. But the fear up front is always, I know I can't just stop at one or two cookies. I always eat all of them. And I'm like, yes, but that's also because you've never practiced really giving yourself permission to interact with them long enough to actually adopt an abundance mindset to where now we don't feel like we're having that last supper. Steph, I'm going to let you have the final word here as we wrap up.
I just want to remind people that weight gain doesn't happen in a vacuum. When he mentioned, why would we continue to go back to these foods that got us here in the first place? Cookies never made anyone overweight. Never, never, ever, ever. If you are someone who has extra body fat and you need to lose weight or you want to lose weight, overeating is what got you there. Yes, some foods are easier to overeat than others, but there is not a food on the planet that is just quote unquote fattening. It's just, hey, you happen to get a little more pleasure and it's a little more convenient and it's a little bit easier to eat that one. But just because that's true doesn't mean that it's impossible to enjoy these foods. Once you know that, you get your power back from the foods because you can start to create some intention and some boundaries around eating them. So you actually get the joy and the pleasure instead of having it tainted with guilt and shame and frustration. So make sure that if this is sounding reasonable to you, if you want a different way, instead of thinking about how to count down to the days where you might get a cheat meal and then feel like it takes you 3 days to get back on track, subscribe and leave us a comment. I would love to hear what you have to say about this topic. Has cheat meals served you, or has it been a big ass problem in your life?
Thanks, y'all. We'll catch you on the next one.